Hi folks, we are Sophie and Philippe, two professional chefs and regenerative farmers. Currently we're setting up our second regenerative farm in central Portugal, where we grow food for our local community and share our knowledge both on the land and in the kitchen. On this channel we take you along on the farm's development and we show you how we grow, cook and preserve nutrient-dense, regeneratively grown, delicious food. In a time where the food we're eating is literally killing us, the most powerful and impactful action one could take is to consume nutrient-dense, regeneratively grown, clean food. Let's grow it, let's cook it, let's do it. Pepper time! End of summer, which means that the peppers are rolling out of your gardens if everything is going well, or if they're not rolling out of your own gardens, you might be getting them for a cheap price at the farmer's market, or you're buying them in bulk somewhere responsible, I hope. And if that is the case, you are looking for a way to preserve these beauties. Now, when they come off the vine, they look lush, shiny, crisp, crunchy, sweet. Could you love a bell pepper more? I doubt it. But the unfortunate truth about a bell pepper is that once you leave it on the counter for a few days, it starts to look like a smoker that's been out in the sun for 40 years, saggy and wrinkly. And that is always a little bit sad. So don't despair. These saggy old beep bastards, I was gonna say, are still very tasty, but of course have less crunch as they age. So what I like to do is I like to pick through my bell peppers and separate the not so beautiful ones from the very beautiful ones. The beautiful ones make it onto our dinner plate fresh, and the rest of these get transformed into something delicious. That's what we're going to be doing today. Now, we are always looking for ways to preserve these outside of our freezer, because our freezer is always packed with stuff. So the more that I can store on a shelf, the better, and the less volume that takes up, also the better. Therefore, I'm going to start off with one of my favorite ways, and that is by dehydrating them and making a delicious smoked paprika powder out of them. Let me preface this by saying that I used a batch of peppers with some spots on them, and that is why I cleaned them so thoroughly. We could also smoke them whole and string them by the pedicel, the green part at which it attaches to the plant. This leads to a less sweet result though. Last time we smoked bell peppers, we laid them out flat onto trays, but this time I tried another technique. These peppers dried at 60 degrees Celsius in 24 hours, and they are ready when they snap like a potato crisp. Okay, so this is the dehydrator, and yesterday I had made these wonderful strings and I had hung down the peppers to smoke. Unfortunately, when they got soft, they started squashing too much together, and I had made little knots, but they also slid off those. So instead of just keeping them in that formation, I laid them flat onto the trays to dehydrate like this, but still attached to the string. And that is going to be very useful, because what we're going to do now is we're going to bring it to the smoker. Let's go to the smoker and let me explain to you how that one works. Catcher, a wind chime, maybe because they're called dream catchers. So this quantity, of course, is quite little, and this is just for us to demonstrate to you how to make this at home. We have bigger amounts of all kinds of powder in our pantry, so we don't need to make another big batch of this. But if you are making this yourself, I would advise you make a bigger batch for all the effort that you're going to put in, and then you have smoked paprika powder for a while to come. All right, so this is our homemade cold smoker. Philippe built this out of an old fridge. So if you ever see an old fridge by the side of the road, especially these tall ones, you have an opportunity to make yourself a smoker, and you should not let that opportunity pass by. It's very simple. He cut out the middle piece here to connect the two chambers. On the bottom part here is where the smoke is actually created. That is done using this fire spiral, and this is a timer, so you put sawdust in here, very fine sawdust of any wood type that is preferred for the recipe that you're working with. This can be apple, or hickory, or cherry, or oak. There are some woods that you shouldn't use that are toxic, but those 4 that I've mentioned now are commonly used ones, preferred ones. They all have a different aroma. So you sprinkle the sawdust in the spiral, you then light the spiral, and very slowly over time the spiral will burn. Of course, if you want less time, you don't fill up the spiral all the way. So forth and so on. I think that's quite self-explanatory. Yes, so this whole spiral would be 12 hours for depending a bit on the wood though as well, right? All right, and then what happens here is the magic happens up in the second chamber, because the smoke will obviously come from down below, go up. This is a cold smoker. We also have a hot smoker, but in today's video we're doing cold smoking. Then you hang your produce, or you layer your produce on some racks on the top, and then you close these doors. The smoke will exit on the top of the smoker, and then for however long is needed for the thing that you're smoking, you now have a perfect place to smoke stuff. We usually do a lot of cold cuts like hams and stuff. That's winter stuff though. All right, let's smoke ourselves some peppers. All right, the only kind of smoking I like these days. So this is going to be here for about 2 to 3 hours. We want a light smoke. If you're into really heavy smoke, then you could obviously do it longer. I don't really think that that's necessary, but that's a personal choice. Let's blitz, shall we? Just kidding, of course I'm talking about another type of blitzing, but really seriously, if you haven't played this game yet, I highly recommend it. Blitz is super fun to play with your family after dinner, and I'm not sponsored, I'm just really saying this because we have been addicted to Blitz for years, and my secret wish for the world is that everybody becomes great at this game so we can all show our stuff at the dinner table and outsmart one another. Let's get back to the paprika powder now. That is a cool technique, right? The smoking closet has brought us so much joy, and I'm sure there will be many more recipes coming up using the smoker. Now we're moving on to recipe number 2. The second method that I'm going to show you is actually a freezing method, and this is the best way I've found to preserve them in a way where they are ready to eat straight from the freezer. If I want to have a nice sweet pepper salad as a side dish at any dinner or lunch, I can just take this out an hour in advance and serve it cold.
It's in the air, you feel that it's bringing back images. We're making our way at long last, feeling like a new day. If you can find it now, see. Ooh, and if you send it back, we're gonna get it. Alright. Oh, merciful radio energy. When I call, will you call back to me? Oh, merciful radio energy. Won't you hear my call? Oh. See me in the colorful light. Even when it comes, I'll be fading in time. Ooh. Oh. Weeds in one frame at a time. Gotta hold the lead to win if you get it. Oh, merciful radio energy. When I call, will you call back to me? Oh, merciful radio energy. Now I'll never find my way back home again. Call, I mean it all. You've been fine. Again, around again. When I finally catches up to you. Oh, merciful radio energy. When I call, will you call back to me? Oh, merciful radio energy. I'll never make my way back home again.
So now we have this beautiful bowl of this sweet pepper flesh, and what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to season it with that oil that I made, and I'm also going to rip it into slightly smaller pieces. I'm not going to do that with a knife because everything is so nice and soft. I can just tear them into smaller pieces, and then I'm going to freeze this in 2 different batches, which means we'll have 2 delicious little sides to just take out of the freezer and eat when we don't have much time to cook. Now I was gonna add a little bit of honey in here, but I've just tasted it and they're so sweet that it really doesn't need any honey. The only thing I'm going to add right before serving is maybe a dash of balsamic oil and some salt. Oil is maybe a dash of balsamic vinegar and a little bit of salt to season it, and then I'm going to serve this at room temperature, and I know that it will be a big success. So we've had a vacuum machine for a very long time, and it is, in my opinion, definitely an essential if you're doing a lot of food preservation, because oxygen obviously is the enemy when you're freezing things. But if you don't have one of these at home, what you could do is you could just pop it into a bag and make sure that as much of the air as possible is out of the bag, and then just seal it with a tight knot, and that will also do the trick. But with these puppies, you have much more guarantee that they're going to actually stay vacuum sealed and that you're not going to get freezer burn happening or dehydration of your product. Next up, a sweet pepper relish. So this is a super simple recipe, and you can either make this with sweet bell peppers, but you could also make it spicy by adding in any kind of chili pepper. You can vary with yellow, orange, red and green sweet bell peppers. This is all very much to your liking. In this recipe, I'm going to be using our red bell peppers and some green bell peppers, which are the unripe versions of the red ones. And we are going to store it in the fridge. That's just because I'm making 1 jar, but if I were to make more of it, I would water bathe it, and because the pH level is very low, under 4, because we're going to add a lot of vinegar, you could keep this safely on the shelf after 20 minutes of water bathing. Pimentada time. So this is a concentrate of roasted bell peppers, and we're going to let those ferment for 1 week, and then we're going to cut off the fermentation process by adding 20% salt, and that leads to a very delicious, deeply flavorful pimentada paste, so bell pepper paste that you can use in cooking the same way you would use a tomato concentrate. Making pimentada is an age-old tradition in Philippe's family and in the area we live now. Everybody has a slightly different version though, and this one is one that's stored on the shelf for 1 year. You have to check the pH as you ferment, as it should drop below 4.6 within the first few days of fermentation. Alright, so now we have this giant bowl of these wonderful roasted peppers with as little skin on them as possible. If you can't get it off all, that isn't problematic. Just really try to get as much as you can off them, and the best tip for that is to really keep them in that oven long enough to blister all the way around, get those blistery black blisters going, because that's the point at which the skin has really detached itself from the meat, and you can easily peel it off when they're cooled down. Now I'm going to pass this through the passe vide. Now transfer the pepper puree in a sterile glass jar until they are halfway full. This is because the pepper paste will bubble up as it ferments, and you need to stir it back down every 12 hours. The whole process takes between 5 to 7 days, as you need to let the pepper puree ferment, which means it rises up to almost twice its height, after which you stir it to bring it back down. Repeat this process until the mixture no longer rises. Stir with a very clean tool and cover the bowls with a fine mesh cloth. Leave the bowls to ferment in a dark place with a stable temperature of around 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. Once the mixture no longer creates any gases, weigh out the whole and add in 20% of that weight in salt. Now we have a puree that is shelf stable, as the pH is 3.8 and the salt levels are very high. We top it off with some olive oil to prevent oxygen from getting in contact with the puree and spoiling the whole, and then we seal it and store it on the shelf in our pantry. Et voila! These are our sweet bell peppers transformed into products that we can now store on the shelves, with the exception of course of our pepper salad, which is stored in the freezer and will stay well up to half a year. The rest of it will store up to a year in the pantry. No cooling required, so that's really great news. Now let me show you what we make with our pimentada, for instance. So in today's meal we're going to be using a lot of our own grown stuff, some locally sourced hunted meat, javali or wild boar, and we are going to make a family favorite which we vary upon during the year with different ferments and different types of meats. But the concept basically is a wonderful pliable flatbread stuffed with some really delicious falling off the bone meat, all kinds of different sauces, some spongy pickle or ferment, and then it's crispy, it's juicy, it's savory, it's delicious. Let's get started. All right, so once your onions are translucent, now is the time to be adding all your spices. So first we're gonna add the peppercorns, then we're going to add the cumin. This is 1 tablespoon of cumin. We're going to add 3 bay leaves, and we're going to add 2 tablespoons of this PIMENTADA. And I'm gonna also be adding some of our own tomato flake mixture. Recipes for all of these homemade things are on our website. I'll leave the links below, and there are also videos on how to make them, so check those out if you're interested. So this is the homemade vinegar, and then this is shurupiga, and that is grape juice with very strong alcohol extracted from wine. Let the alcohol cook off for a moment and then add the tomato chunks. We also add 1 of our do-it-yourself stock cubes for extra depth, and then we place the meat inside of the pot. Make sure to add enough water to just cover the meat. We are using a whole shoulder of wild boar with the bone inside. Close the pressure cooker and let it cook for 1 hour after it starts hissing on a low heat. Then turn off the heat and wait for the pressure to disappear before opening up the pot. Remove the bones, then chop up the meat and bring the meat back into the pan. Let it simmer to reduce the sauce until it's a nice consistency. This is the time to add in any extra salt if necessary. Now things got a little hectic at this point as our kids came home from a visit to grandma, so we had a family fun time in the kitchen, singing and rolling out some whole grain flatbreads. All right, folks, that concludes another episode. In next week's episode, we're going to give you a full farm update again. Know that all the full recipes are up on our website. And if you still want to join us for our regenerative gardening course coming up next week, there are still a few spots available. The Farming Chefs, peace out. P.S. If you want to check out some videos on how to make your own cheese or maybe ferment your own chili paste, check out one of these 2 videos.